Hey everybody, this is Sam Coster from Butterscotch Shenanigans again. Just filling you guys in on another Inkscape video showing how it is that I go about making some of the assets that you'll be seeing in Crashlands here in a few months when we launch. Now what I'm working on here is actually something that I call Pipedirt. We needed some sort of resource that pretty easily allowed you to convert something into pipes, because the next item you're going to be building is a sort of oil rig. So, I started playing with some ideas, and essentially what you actually see here is that entire process. The only thing I really knew I wanted was obviously some pipes kind of growing out of something. So as I messed with stuff here, you'll notice it actually takes me a little bit longer than usual to figure out what's happening, and then you'll also see a good number of what I'll call mechanical errors that happen throughout this that kind of slow down the process a bit. Now, you see I'm very frequently duplicating things and using what's called simplify, which most people have hotkeyed as Control L, but I have switched to the tab key to make it easier. And anytime you see the lines kind of shudder and then wiggle a little bit, that's a simplification happening. What that does is it smooths out some of the edges. So at this point, I'm still just trying to get a rough sort of idea of what it is that I'm building. And that simplification tool allows me to spend a little less time working on nitty-gritty stuff and getting kind of the bigger picture done. So you'll see here in the shadows that what I'm doing is duplicating first that original square, dragging it down, and then intersecting it with the original again. And what that causes is that sort of deepening shadow look. And then I simply duplicate that, grab it, and scale it and tween it depending on which pipe it's going on to make sure it actually fits appropriately. So at this point, I've kind of decided that these pipes are where they need to be. So I want to do something a little bit different so they don't just look boring and kind of stick-like. So we're going to add these kind of goofy protrusions on here, and you see that transformation there is just me scaling stuff around so that I can very easily put them on every single one of these pipes. And you'll see experimentation happening here rapidly as well, like that quick deletion of the side nodes, just to see if maybe there's something else hidden in here that I hadn't seen before. So when I was talking earlier about some errors that I made that slowed me down, one of the biggest ones is not figuring out a way to actually group all of those sort of pipe items together, which you'll see later on causes a bit of a headache when I try to recolor things, and then again later on. Now I'm just grabbing the pencil tool and drawing some circles, select all of them and add them together, which I believe is usually Control plus is the hotkey for that, but I've converted that also just to the A key. So when I'm Inkscaping, it's kind of like I'm playing an FPS or League of Legends because of the hotkeys that I've set up. At this point, we're doing color, so I just did a dropper on the tile that it's actually going to be living on, which is the ice, and then swung the wheel to the opposite side. The idea here being to bring a lot of contrast between the object and the ground that it's on. We are in the tundra, so a lot of the items here actually have a similar sort of color scheme just by virtue of doing that sort of contrasted color idea. Here we're adding in some detail lines. These are just very simple pencil markings. And these are the sort of thing that don't by themselves make much sense, but when you add them all up together, then it ends up creating a sort of gritty looking image that is now kind of the hallmark of the stuff that I make. You see me messing with the color here. And now we're going in to add some of the detail lines into that base piece. And if you just notice how many times I draw something and then delete it, like I said, there's a lot of experimentation going on because I don't always have a very clear idea of what it is I'm trying to do until I do it. And this is actually an excellent example with this, the bottom of the pipes. I wanted them to look a little bit more, organic, like they're actually growing out of there, a little more dirty. So I grabbed the pencil tool, wound it up and down on the bottom of the pipe, and then simply subtracted it from the pipe itself, and so it gave it this sort of cut up look, which also helped that bottom sort of mossy piece look like it was kind of creeping up in there. So with some shading and stuff later, it sells the effect a bit more. You notice I do zoom out about every couple minutes just to make sure that things kind of look good from what will actually be the player point of view, because obviously this level of detail is not necessarily going to be seen even if it's just felt. Here we begin to do the black 30 opacity trick, which is how I do all my shadows. I believe I mentioned in a recent video that I had the sudden realization a while ago that I could use other colors that were dark as shadowing agents, and it kind of adds a really much more cool and less desaturated vibe to the shadows. So these ones are actually a deep blue. I'm going through and just adding shadows onto that mossy piece. So now I'm experimenting with different colors. So what I usually do is Inkscape has conveniently that big row of colors that you see along the bottom there. And the first about, I believe, 32 of which are first the blacks and whites, and then 8-bit and 16-bit colors. And so all I do is to determine kind of what guess of the particular color I want is flip through those really, really fast. So I'll go, pure red, pure green, dark green, pure blue, light blue, etc. And then once I find one that looks like it might look good, then I'll actually scroll the bar over and grab one of the other colors from that sort of that side of the color wheel. So I'm just going in here and adding again more and more of that tiny amount of detail, which you can really feel in the game even if you can't quite see it somehow. I don't know how that works, but it appears to be true. So at this point we're getting there, but I'm still a little bit unhappy with the color. So you'll see what's going to happen here in a second. That big error I was talking about. This is me trying to select all of the pipe pieces. This actually took about a minute and a half, which of course is too freaking long. So hopefully that'll be the last for coloring. Now we're going on here and slapping the highlights in. So highlights are always fun, and I've been experimenting with some other ways to do it, just being completely dirty with them, kind of spackling them out, and then using a really bright color just so I keep track of them as I go, and then actually doing that same sort of color experimentation technique, just flipping through a bunch of those originals, which you see down there in the bottom left, dark red, dark yellow, bright yellow, etc. Flip through all those and pick one, and then go to the color wheel and actually hone it a little more. So it's going to happen here in about a second. So flipping through. While the reds and pinks are certainly interesting, I don't think they look particularly good. So we ended up going with a kind of high yellow to make it really look kind of a golden. And then these are done just by doing a simple subtraction. So just draw the sort of triangular shape on the shadow, select it in the shadow, and use a subtract function. It gives you a nice sort of cutout piece, which adds a little bit more detail. I'm going here and just adding a little bit of detail, shading to that mossy piece. And here we're adding just kind of a big body shadow to the thing. So I duplicated it, added it all together, drew this thing on top of it, intersected with that, and then cut pieces of that away so I can make these highlights in the bottom here. A little more detail. And then duplicate it, slap it on the ground, maybe add a little something to make sure the shadow actually sells itself. And that's it. That is Pipedirt.